Well, hello and welcome to the 159th episode of the Adoption and Fostering Podcast. This week we're mansplaining our way through the adoption and fostering and special guardianship landscape with me, Al Coates, and him,
Scott Casson-Ranai. I love that, mansplaining. Where does that come from? Did someone tell you were mansplaining this week and that's why you thought, right, I'm going to cover that in the podcast?
No, I saw this meme and the woman was saying, like, when a man explains something to a woman, that's mansplaining. And when when a man explains something to another man, that's called a podcast. And I thought, that's
Just
it.
for the benefit of any doubt, I hope that we never mansplain anything. But I can see why that'd be funny.
Well, this could be our moment, couldn't it? We could lean into that with all the questions we've been asked this week. So we had a guest, didn't we, lined up, who unfortunately had to pull out.
We did.
I didn't ask you, why did he pull out? Can I ask that?
Well, I think that's a bit of a personal question, and the innuendos are endless with that one. But we were due to have the CEO of the Hidden Disability Sunflower Scheme on, Paul White, but unfortunately his something's happened in Latin America, and he had to be at a meeting. So yes, he postponed, but we have got a new date for him, and that's going to be in a couple of weeks' time. So, and yeah, he's you've met him.
It'd be good.
I've met him. It'll be a good crack when we do get him on, because he is a proper Essex geezer.
And, so we can unpick that world, can't we?
Exactly.
So I have a really long list of topics, but I'm not really any route that I wanted to kind of go off half-cocked, really. So I thought we'll just ask some questions. So but before we get into that, Scott, how are you?
I'm really well, Al. Thank you. I'm now on holiday for 8 days.
Well, that's you took a midweek one.
Standard.
You said to me, I'm going for nearly a week. And I went, the days up, and I went, no, that's 8 days, Scott. That's 8 days. Honestly,
I know, but with the flights, I am literally going to be there for 7 days, but I fly back on the 7th day overnight. So that makes it 8 days, doesn't it? Officially, I think.
Our HR department weep at the very mention of your name.
I think it's worthwhile saying this isn't a holiday officially. I mean, yes, I am going to a different country. I'm going to Canada, but I am going to visit family. And yeah, I'm not going to say any more than that because it's rather delicate. But yes, I will try and enjoy myself. I plan on visiting Niagara Falls on my own. I plan on going to Toronto on my own.
Like Princess Diana, you're going to take photographs of you next to interesting landmarks, looking wistful.
Well, I may well. Who knows?
Please do. Or send me a selfie of you at Niagara Falls, feeling sad about Tracy.
No, you know what's the best thing about Niagara Falls, right? So there's a little visitor centre right next to Niagara Falls, right at the fall, okay? Visitor centre. And there is the most amazing coffee donut place there called Tim Hortons, right? Anybody who's been to Canada will know Tim Hortons, right? Tim Hortons donuts and coffee, just the best. And that's where I will perch myself for an hour at least this week. They have them all over Canada, but they are just the most amazing donuts. And I could literally sit and eat a pack. They do like a slab of 12 donuts. I may well partake and just be a pig.
Eat one for me. That would be great. That would be wonderful.
I will.
Yeah. Excellent.
But anyway, yes. Apart from that, yes. Oh, good, Al. How are you?
We haven't done one of these
kind of podcasts for a while. So
that's true. I'm on the cusp of some sort of psychological breakdown, but other than that, generally fine. No,
fabulous.
It's almost like you have like a 10-year storm or a 100-year storm, and it's like since records began. I'm having sort of a march to end all marches, where literally every day since the beginning of February I've worked. And that goes right the way through till the 1st of April, and then I'm going to just sort of have a total emotional, physical, psychological breakdown. So it's all really exciting stuff. It's really good. It's all like opportunities. You can't not say, So people say, hey, would you come and do this? And I go, yeah. And then someone else says it, and then all of a sudden your diary's really busy. So it's like a really good problem to have. But yeah.
Glad I asked.
Yeah. Well, it's really, I'm trying to think what else I'm doing. I'm doing some fun things. And my brother's home from Africa, which is really nice. My mother's been unwell.
That. Yes, I did see he was home.
And we almost look like twins. It's scary.
You are literally. I mean,
curmudgeonly.
literally. you do just look identical.
Oh, it's terrifying.
Yeah, I know.
So the good thing about that is, though, as I've literally said to him, right, I've done my mum for 6 weeks, right? I've like literally, she's yours now. You can do the next 6 weeks because I'm honestly.
Is that how long he's here for?
I have no idea. My brother is like the Scarlet Pimpernel.
Yeah, he does seem to just arrive and disappear, doesn't he?
Oh, literally. There's been days in my life where Richard's just appeared at the door. Like you're like you've come 6,000 miles and you might have rang ahead. But, you know, it's this idea of a good laugh.
Yeah, why not?
But it was actually, we were talking earlier, weren't we, about, because we, as we're getting older, we're reaching a certain age, aren't we, as adults, where the adults in our lives, our parents are kind of, those that are left, we've both lost our dads, that we're realising we're having to assume sort of a different role, which is really peculiar. And what made me... Now, that's fine, and it's odd, because I remember being like a teenager and watching my parents do that with my grandparents, and then that's to me that. But what has really slightly freaked me out as the thought of which one of my kids is going to step up and look after me.
Actually, I've not thought of that. Thanks for that image. I think I might just book my nursing home now and be done with it. Just resign myself to the fact.
Well, start putting into the Dignitas fund.
Well, we can go to Belgium now as well as Switzerland, so we should be all right.
Yeah.
It's a bit more local, isn't it?
Oh,
that is a really interesting thing, isn't it? Because, you float through life and you think, everything's lovely. And, we obviously as families with, issues that are up and down, you do. And then all of a sudden the parents start causing you problems. You're like, why are you doing this now? Can you just wait another couple of years? That's an interesting one. And I'm sure we've just shocked the bejesus out of probably 50% of our listeners who are now thinking, yes.
They've had to press pause and have a sit down.
Pour themselves a gin.
Take a very deep breath. How does this play out? It is an interesting thought, though, isn't it? Because that is the nature of life. And
yes.
And the nature of, you were talking about some of the issues that we were just having a chit chat before we started. And you were talking about this week is Neurodiversity Week, is it? I'm sorry if I've got that wrong.
Yeah, no, there's lots of things going on this week, all to do with the brain. It's I think it's Brain Injury Awareness Week, Neurodiversity Week, all this sort of stuff. So it's all brain related stuff.
It must be like a fiesta in your house then.
Well, I mean, it starts. Yeah, we've got the piñatas out.
You tick every box. I was really flippant. I feel like that I'm overstepping my social work there.
No, you're fine. You're not a social worker with me. You're a friend. I don't think let's not push it to friend.
And when we're on Zoom, what jurisdiction am I in? Can I literally say anything because I'm on Zoom and it doesn't count?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, excellent. And I can't hit you. I can't hit you. So physically can't hit you.
You'd text my kids though.
Yeah, yesterday was an anniversary for me, as you know. Mm-hmm. Well, we know. It's the first anniversary of the aneurysms, of the ruptures. So a year yesterday was the day where I availed of a helicopter ride to hospital, and I don't remember much for about 3 weeks afterwards. So we're doing well today. I can remember today. That was great. But it kind of falls quite neatly in that week because I think it's actually some kind of conditions are for the month. So, America likes to do things in months, don't they? They like to do an awareness month rather than awareness week. Anyway, so yesterday I was really, it'll be out later this week. I'm going to plug another podcast, I'm afraid, but the Sunflower Conversation. Yeah, the Sunflower Conversations podcast. Because
can't hear.
Obviously I do a bit of work for them in my role, and I was invited to talk about it being, I can't remember the acronym, but anyway, it's Brain Injury Week. And myself and my counterpart, or partial counterpart in the US, Holly, who's originally from Britain, but she now lives in California, and she does all the social media for the America Sunflower. So we were invited along. She has a condition called continual concussion something or other. I did write it down, but I haven't got it in front of me. So, but anyway, she was, I mean, horrendous to think what she went through. She literally, one of her co-workers in the office sat up and her head was too close and whacked her on the side of the head. And basically, she has this condition now that it affects her speech, it affects her walking, it affects her working, it affects her watching screens, etc. And it was a very freak accident that happened. Anyway, we talked about brain injuries for that podcast. It's out this week, and you know, when
where
I'm
can
thinking
people
about,
find that? When people, because people might be
well, yeah, I mean,
turning to the dark side.
You can just look for Sunflower Conversations on any podcast platform and you will find it. Cool. It's hosted by a lovely lady called Chantal, who works for the podcast for the Sunflower as well. But it got me to thinking about, you know, that yes, my house is literally literally a brain haven. I think there's not one of us who don't have either a diagnosed or undiagnosed condition. You know, Tris always says he's ADHD. Like when he was younger, they suspected he had ADHD, and he actually wouldn't. A couple of weeks ago, he did one of those online tests, and it went, "You have ADHD." Yeah, and I'm not laughing at it because I do think that he does have kind of, you know, a little bit of
traits.
ADHD. Yeah, traits. That's the word. Traits. Yes.
Traits. Oh, bless him. And having spent a weekend with him, I get that.
Yeah, exactly. And you know all the children do because you spent a couple of days with them as well. So
it's a real issue for our community, isn't it? Because a lot of that stuff is
massive.
Stuff that we're not. It feels like it's our knowledge as a society in the medical. It feels like it's exponentially growing compared to like 10, absolutely. 15, 20, 30 years ago, where, you know, ADHD wasn't a thing. So I do think that for the adoption community and the fostering community and special guardian community, it's just high prevalence, isn't it? Really,
it is. Yeah. And, you know, like I say, some of us might be diagnosed or undiagnosed. And, you know, I think the biggest thing that I've learned over the last year is that we just need to be a little bit more understanding about people's ability, whether they're diagnosed or not. You know, if they're diagnosed, then obviously... Is this
a dig at me?
No,
in the podcast.
No, not at all. HR.
Well, I'll try harder.
Personnel. No, it's just saying that, you know, I mean, I now have a better understanding of what it's like to live with, you know, an issue with your brain. So therefore, I have a little bit more empathy for others. And, you know, it doesn't mean to say that I understand it completely because their symptoms might be very different to mine. You know, and we're all very, very different as individuals, but it's just, you know, we just all need to be a little bit more aware that, you know, we may not function in the same ways. And I think that sometimes, you know, if you've had an issue brain-wise, and maybe you're a little bit more open to thinking that way. But yeah, it's, you know, something that, you know, whether it's developmental delay or FASD or whatever, you know, our community really has, it's there, and it's in addition to everything else, shall we say?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is just. Yeah, I think I'd like to think that we are becoming more compassionate as a society, but there's still sort of strongholds of idiocy, in amongst of all of that in different professions, and I'm trying to think. I can't remember who it was. I mean,
as a social worker, you've been amazing. As a friend, you've been rubbish because you just take the mickey out of me all the time.
Yeah, that's well.
Not denying it.
I can't, because I just think that humour is just great. And
yes, well, it is. It's an amazing medication. It really is. But
I am conscious that you've got to know the person if you're making fun of people, you've got to know them really well. So I always sort of like, I remember when I was maybe 18, I was in a youth group, you know, ping pong and hot dogs, that sort of thing. Back in the 80s, flipping heck. World's moved on, hasn't it?
It has.
And I remember a youth worker saying to me, said, "You need to be careful, son," or whatever, you know, son. He said, "Your mouth is going to get you into trouble," and it's brought me to the edge of myself and beyond. So I tried really hard not to be an idiot. And on that note, on that bombshell,
easier said than done.
Well, honestly, I have. There's a trail of. I was listening to you know, the rock singer from AC/DC.
No, I wouldn't. I'm more Steps Navel of.
He's called
whatever,
Brian Robson,
yeah.
so he's a local Geordie lad, and he's Brian.
Right.
And he talks like that, and he's like a Geordie, and he wears a flat cap, and he's an AC/DC.
Right.
That's my Brian Johnson impression. And he went, oh, and I was this interview on a podcast, and he was hilarious. He was a proper raconteur. And the people he said things, and he went, and people were like gasping, and he was going, honestly, I just opened my mouth, and we just see where fate is going to take us. And I just thought, oh, that's a great quote. It's just.
Yeah, it's great that he's not a social worker and he can get away with it. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's the man not going to lose. So let's go through some of these questions that we got sent. I'm going to start with some easy ones. So we're going to get some Scott hot takes questions.
Here we go.
Right, some easy ones. Right. So this is a really specific question. Here we go. So it was in relation to from Instagram from VLM Therapy. So that's Vicky McEwen. It was saying that that she'd been told by someone. I'm just looking for the exact wording so I don't say anything out of. So, is that people have been told to? Hang on, I can't kind of.
Shall I just do a little dance while we're waiting on you?
If you could entertain yourself, that'd be good.
Yeah.
It was in terms of people being told, social workers being told that they can't do ASF assessments / assessments of need. Yeah, you need to stop rubbing your beard because it's setting your microphone off, just so you know.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
I wasn't actually rubbing my beard, I was picking my nose, but whatever.
Picking your nose, so whatever. Assessment of needs / ACS. I'm hearing some people are not being told no, that they can't have them. So why? So my understanding is that it's a statutory requirement.
Yeah, I was going to say. Yeah.
So I went off like a good little beaver and I found the law. So under the Adoption Support Service Regulations 2005, Section 13, Part 4, Regulation 13, says basically that the following persons are prescribed for the purpose of the Sections Act as persons whose request an assessment must be carried out. So that's the child of an adoptive parent. That's a really weird saying. Whether adopted or not. Whether adopted or not. So, if you've got a biological child and you've also got an adopted child in the family, you can ask for assessment. I've never seen that before. A child who is a natural sibling of an adoptive child, whether full or half-blood. A related person in relation to an adoptive child. And so then it just talks about in assessing the person's needs for adoption support services, the local authority are not required to assess the person's need for a service if he is not within the description of the persons to whom the provision. So actually it's the law. You can't not do an assessment of need.
Well, that is interesting, isn't it? Because I guess that's where you were going with that. And my hot take on that is that we should be getting this out there that it's statutory and they can't refuse to do it. There may be a delay to it if they've not got someone who can assess, but certainly can't refuse. So, So Vicky, you need to, you need that quote. You need to be telling people now we're having an assessment.
Yeah, if you go to Part 4 rules, they give the whole breakdown of how you get one, what's required. The element that is always contentious is the fact they don't have to give you it; they just have to assess it. But
yeah. But if you've got that assessment and it has recommendations, that's the next part, isn't it? And let's face it, as parents of children who've been through the care system, we know that nothing's ever that easy, and the chances are that everything is going to be a bloody fight, whether it's
absolutely. And I mean, even here it says assessment for financial support. In regulations you can ask for it. So I think that people can be bolstered with their social worker, basically.
Yeah, I think they can. You can afford to be as well because it is written in statutory guidance, and there's not
guidance, it's the law. You
could be as picky as you like.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, that's all right. Anytime. I can see the love in your eyes here.
It's made me feel warm and fluffy. I'm tearing up. That's the nicest
Right,
thing
next.
anyone's ever said to me.
Well, that's no surprise.
Well, apart from one of my employers who says, I employ you because you're pedantic. But that's another story altogether.
Yeah.
So next on the question is, so we asked for general topics and themes. International adoption. Hot take, Scott. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it just what it is?
Well, do you know, that's an interesting thing because because we've got a podcast recording coming up next month with a representative from Bernardo's Island. Ooh. And we're going to be talking about adoption in Ireland, aren't we? But what's interesting is, this feels like a really meaty, juicy thing. I'm not saying that I disagree with it because I think it has a place. However, I think that it's very similar. I have the very similar thoughts of it to I do about surrogacy, where, you know, surrogacy was never on my kind of, you know, it was never in my brain to go down that route, because I just feel that, you know, as a rule, normally we have enough children in the care system who are potentially looking for permanence, whether that be with kinship, special guardianship, adoptive, or long-term fostering. So I just feel that there's enough there. And I'm not trying to put, you know, people like a friend of the show, Sat Winder, out of business, because I do think there is a need for it. But I do think that it's one of those things that, you know, it's very specialist. And, you know, there's certain kind of ethnicities where that's where I'm going with this. For reasons of ethnicity, I think that actually it's a potentially a positive thing. But other than that, no, I don't think that, you know, I don't think that Caucasian British people should be going abroad
to Malawi and bringing back a set of kids.
I don't get me wrong. I know that happened years ago, and when I was younger, I knew a couple who'd adopted 2 Chinese children from China, and that didn't seem abnormal to me. I didn't think anything of it back then, even thinking about it. They stick in my head, but they stick in my head because of the adoption side now, rather than, you know, the fact that they were Chinese with 2 white parents. But I just think, you know. That's my view on it anyway. I don't know.
It's really interesting because actually we've got another an episode I recorded with a guy called Brady from the USA, and he's an adoptive parent, and he's adopted internationally as well as from the US care system. And one of the things long story short, is that he's adopted some children with Downs. So I want to keep my powder dry for the podcast. People listen to it because I think there's a lot of cultural stuff there that's really different for us. But his point, and I think it was really well made, was that, you know, you've got a child with Downs who was found on the corner of the street in a Chinese city. And he's adopted, so now he lives in Utah, I think. And it's great to play the high. We can play the high, you know, what's the right thing, the wrong thing. Yeah, but that's not good enough for that child, is it? Because that child literally would be in a state orphanage, probably at the bottom of the pecking order in a state orphanage. Yeah. Great. Of course, all of that cultural stuff would be there, and all of that identity, but his identity has been severed in the sense of his biological, not necessarily his national and ethnic identity. So you're balancing these really complicated needs. But if anyone's interested in this, I would recommend getting the book by Catherine Joyce called "The Child Catchers." Don't read it as a page turner for your holidays. It's a harrowing read, and it gives a really good account of some of the US organizations, how they trawl the world for disasters, basically, to pick up children. Okay, yeah. So
is this a free book you've been sent?
No, it's a book I actually bought.
Right. I was just checking. Checking.
No. And so it's a really harrowing book. But that said, when I spoke to Sat Winder, I bumped into him at the House of Lords. Did I mention it?
Will you stop dropping this rubbish on me, please?
I was just walking down the corridor. Oh, Sat, what are you doing? No, I didn't. It was like we were at a thing.
Well, as you were talking to Rishi, was it? Yeah.
So No, Silly boy. Anyway, so I was chatting to him about it, and one thing he was mentioning to me, which hadn't even crossed my mind, which is a total fudge of everything, is that if you are, say you're a British Asian, you're British Pakistani, British whatever, you've got a cousin or a niece or a nephew in Pakistan who becomes orphaned. The only way you can get that child, the only route for immigration for that child is through adoption. You have to adopt that child, even though it's your niece or nephew. It's your family, but there's no safe or there's no tangible immigration route. So he said, so he's got quite a few families who are going, I want to get my niece out of that country. I've got to.
Okay.
The only way I can do it is to adopt them.
Yeah.
But that's a fudge.
Well, and I mean, that's interesting in itself, isn't it? Because to be able to adopt legally, you still have to go through the local authority assessment. And from there, you probably have to pay for it as well, because your plan is to adopt a specific child. I mean, don't get me wrong, if it's family, you would do anything for family. Let's face it, you genuinely would, wouldn't you? And how you deal with that is, I guess, up to your individual circumstances. If you said, look, the only way we could look after you was to adopt you, but, I mean, that's a conversation I would have now, having the knowledge that I have, but I guess it's, different when you're kind of all in and you're trying to look after your family. So I guess that's a completely different circumstance. Yeah. And, the reason I brought up Bernardo's Island is because international adoption is the way it's done here. There's very few domestic adoptions here in Ireland, which we'll cover when we chat to you.
There's more international than domestic?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Shut your mouth.
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
well, actually, we have two amazing podcasts coming up, because we're speaking to him, and we're also speaking to someone who works for a fostering agency in Ireland as well. We're going international, baby. International,
baby. Yeah, we're huge in Iceland.
Yeah.
I think we did break into the top 200 podcasts for parenting in Austria last month.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
top 200 in Austria.
Yeah,
one of the smallest countries in the world. Oh well, it is outside Europe, so winner, chicken dinner.
Yeah, we should maybe book a date on the podcast tour.
Focusing on the Austrian,
Go and see Helmut from Vienna.
Yeah. Oh, that's no. You can't do things like that. You can't do accents, and you can't assume that is a name.
Why can't you do accents anymore? Is there a course I need to go on?
Yes, you do. A diversity course, by the sounds of things.
You didn't mind when I did Brian Johnson before, though, did you?
Yeah, but that's you taking the mickey out of your own accent.
I'm not a Geordie. Don't start on me. I know I sound like a Geordie to the untrained ear, but I'm not a Geordie.
To a trained ear, you're a Geordie, mate.
Right, okay.
Crack on.
I think the thing, international adoption, I think, is what is interesting is that I think a lot of people just go, ooh.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, isn't it?
Well, and the thing is, over the time of this podcast, we've spoken to a number of adults who were adopted from other countries. And I think it was never in my mind to go abroad, and we know, we actually have had people. So Joe Garofalo, she adopted from abroad, as did Daniela Shanley. So, but not just that. Yeah. Absolutely. And I'm not saying that they didn't do the right thing. And I'm not saying that they did the wrong thing. I'm just saying that, under some circumstances, it's just not right. So, they'd, in Daniela's, as an example, they have a similar ethnicity to their son. Yeah. But I just, it's well, I'm not saying anybody's doing anything bad by doing it. I'm just saying that, there's other options that are preferable in my eyes, as a result of listening to adults who were adopted from different countries, and they do feel like, their identity, they don't know what their identity is. Susan Cousins was a prime example. She was the one that really made me think, because she was she was a person of color who had been adopted by a complete white family, and she, from memory, she didn't realize that she was a person of color until later in her life, not an adult, but
Yeah, she didn't join her identity with her ethnicity, and there was all that confusion.
Exactly.
But we've also had people like Mim on, Mim, who's also an adopter, who's reflects a different story, who's kind of like can hold the pragmatic tensions of all that.
Yeah.
And we've had Scribble Yoda on. I can't remember her real, not a real name, but a name. So there is a couple out there, and I think I remember. Yeah, there was the Colombian. Oh, I haven't got my list, and I've archived all the old ones, but just search through because I think it generally
it's
just
it's.
The right
I think if you could make your decision by listening to those conversations and balancing the pros and the cons as to whether you would want to do something, like that. I think that's the way anything goes, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, I've been out to places like Africa. My brother lives in Africa, so I've been out to off the tourist trails and seen children with nobody.
Yeah,
at the very far end of the world, and you think, you're gonna to gain something, you have to lose something, and that's when the balance gets really complicated. But I think which is maybe leads on to the next topic, which is social media, where that we've had Claire Tyler ask that question, and also Becky Poole said, "Talk about social media." So Scott, how about it?
Well, I think it's no secret I've not engaged with adoption and social media for the last 12, what are we now, March, so 15 months. It was my New Year's resolution last year not to, because I felt that anything I said was just picked up and it was just
started a fight.
Yeah, it was like a bun fight from the start. That's not to say I won't speak to people. Of course I'll speak to people. And it seems to have kind of picked up again this last couple of weeks. Social media is such a tricky place, isn't it? Because I don't know about you, but when I joined Twitter, you did as well. You had a pseudonym. I had a pseudonym as well, which, is copyrighted. And I had someone kicked off Twitter for you trying to use it as well.
Did you?
I can see you, and it's not going to happen. Anyway, someone else was claiming to be gay adoption dad. Yeah, I had them kicked off. Yeah, I am gay adoption dad. Just let's be clear on that.
TM. Wow.
I've no blue tick, and I'm certainly not paying for one. But
I really want to get a blue tick, but I feel like I don't want to be the person who paid for one. That's really complicated, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not doing that. I can't afford it anyway, to be honest with you. But anyway, so I joined with a pseudonym, and it wasn't until actually I started working for Adoption UK in 2014 I just went, okay, so if I want to make a difference, I need to be myself. Yeah. So I came out, not for the first time in my life, as to be said. Normally under different circumstances, and I did.
Are you gay?
And apparently, yeah.
Not always the last to know.
Were you asleep at my wedding when you were the best man?
Yes.
Yeah, you were, literally. But up until that point, I could have been anybody. I could have said anything. I didn't share. I didn't overshare. But the reason I joined Twitter, back to my original point, was because the options online. I always used to say you can stand at your front door and speak to your neighbour if you're parenting biological children and talk about the issues and probably find a solution, right? But when you're an adoptive parent, you have to shout maybe 50 miles, maybe sometimes to get support. Yeah, from your front door, you can't do that. So online seemed it was at the time. It was a really supportive environment, but what was available online just wasn't working for me. So that's why I joined Twitter under my pseudonym. I started posting about adoption and some of the issues, which, on reflection, yes. If it had just been me, I would have been oversharing. I would have been termed as oversharing and sharing stuff that I shouldn't have been sharing, etc. And there was a couple of years after I came out that it was fine. It was all adoptive parents that I used to engage with. And this isn't to say that I don't want to engage with adopted people. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But, but what's happened now is that I feel that my experience, which is why I came to social media, is no longer relevant to my community because we can't talk about it in public. We can't have that conversation because it's just, it's like them and us. I've never wanted it to be like that. I'm very much a person who loves people. I'm.
Yeah, you're naturally collaborative, aren't you?
I do. I love to work with people. I love to talk to people. We might never agree. I have a son that I very rarely agree with on his outlook on life, but I love him to bits, and I still have normal conversations with him, and that's fine. But that's what we've got to now on social media. You can't have an opinion without someone being abusive to you. And that's what social media feels like for me right now. And that's the reason why I've stepped away from talking about adoption, because I don't feel, well, number one, actually, you have to look after yourself. Yeah. You have to look after your own mental health. Yeah. And if anybody, and this isn't aimed at anyone in particular, this is just a generic kind of, shot in the social media dark, if you like. When people start to say, well, this, that, and the next thing, and it's actually abusive, which happens a lot, then I'm out, because I'm not there for that. It's social. The clues in the name, social. And that's not social. Social media is a bun fight anyway at the minute, Twitter being the way it is and all that sort of stuff. But
I used to not always be a bit disengaged with Facebook because I just found it a bit bland. But actually,
it's quite exciting compared to the other ones at the minute.
Well, no, I feel like it is a place where we can talk.
Yeah.
But I've been thinking about it, and there's a bit of furore over the weekend, but much ado over nothing. I was just sort of saying, look, I don't think we can talk about this anymore. It rippled on, and even up until yesterday, I was still getting notifications. But my feeling is that I just sense a real sense. There's it's a palpable sense of pain in people. A lot of people who've been adopted. Yeah. I get that.
Agreed.
And people don't think I do that, but I'm not going to back down in the sense that I'm not. I mean, I am different to you. I think.
Yeah, you are very. Yeah,
I think
we have a different kind of way of dealing with it.
A different constitution, haven't we? So I sort of think I can go. Have what they said about me is legitimate, and if it is, I'll then maybe amend that. And if it's not, I'll go. Well, it's not true. It doesn't matter. But my reflection is that I think in the absence of anywhere where people can have... So if hypothetically, if you're an adopted adult and you're having a complicated experience of that, and that's something that's maybe hung over you all of your life, and now you're kind of moving into a place of where you're feeling, I found a community, I feel empowered, I can speak out about it. Well, that's wonderful. That is amazing. But who do you speak to? Who's listening? And so I think then when someone like me puts his head up and goes, hey, I've had a thought about adoption, then people go, oh, right, I can share what I feel. And so sometimes it gets drawn into, like you go, we didn't start this conversation. Well, that's the nature of conversations, isn't it? We didn't start here, but I didn't expect to end up here.
Exactly.
So I kind of take it in that context, going that it is oftentimes it's people, they're palpably angry, but I don't feel like they're angry with me necessarily. I think I do sometimes wind people up, but that's a different story altogether. So I just feel like it's a symptom of where can we have that conversation? Where can people want to express this and point it towards someone, but they can't necessarily talk to their adoptive parents. They can't talk to maybe their biological parents, and the social workers who did it are gone.
Yeah.
So
exactly. But I do feel like if we all have the right to be able to express ourselves how we feel we would wish to. Yeah. We may not agree with each other. However, I just feel like it's, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I think my kind of impression is that when you've had that experience, you're allowed to express your views, but nobody else's view is valid. That's how it feels. And you know, I never claim to understand or to know how it feels to be adopted. I can't, because I am not. That was the Scottish coming out of me there. I'm not adopted. I'm not adopted, so I can't claim that. Okay, that's my first point. My second point is I am an adoptive parent who has experiences of parenting and caring for children who've been through the care system and who are adopted. Therefore, if your experience is valid, why isn't mine? Yeah, because I'm not trying to comment on how you should feel or your experience, and I'm not minimizing or invalidating your experience. I want to learn from you. But when the abuse or the, whatever else it is that starts, how can you then expect me to learn any more and to be able to share that knowledge? Because I share knowledge all the time through training, through, mentoring, etc., etc. I tell people like it is. I don't sugarcoat it.
I sense you feeling quite bristly about this, Scott.
No, I'm not bristly. But what gets to me is the fact that I no longer have a space where I can say, this is how I'm feeling today as a result of something that's happened because of adoption.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that is a shame, because I think there was a genuine sense of community, wasn't there, at one point? And did the community, the worst expression of that was oversharing and maybe derogatory about our children.
Totally get that.
That said, anyone who's ever been a parent has probably thought unsavoury things.
Well, exactly.
And muttered, we've all muttered under our breath, you little toe racket. Every parent, unless you're some sort of, I don't know, super nanny type. But there's a time and a place to express that, isn't there? Like a conversation you and I have all the time. It's not the conversation to have on a podcast or on social media, which is, everyone understands that.
Well, of course, yeah, exactly. And I have learned so much from social media, from engaging with other parents, but also I think I've probably learned the most. And I've said this a couple of times on the podcast. By doing this podcast, I have learned so much, because
it's a blessing.
Adults who were adopted or who are adopted have felt they can come on, they can share their experiences. And by listening to them, it has opened my mind up to how I think and act as a parent and as a human being as well. Mm-hmm. And you know what? If that's what it's doing for me, what is it doing for other people? But secondly, let's not minimize
Helmut in Austria. He's probably very moved.
Yeah, but let's not minimize that by saying that every person who is adopted is abusive, because that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that my experience is valid, because that is my experience, in the same way I am saying to you, your experience is valid. But that doesn't mean to say you have to, yourself. The reason I came off social media was because I was accused of gaslighting and all this sort of stuff. I don't even know what gaslighting means, right? I literally don't know what it means.
I'm with you on
that. Sorry, I didn't know what it means. I looked up the definition, and in actual fact, what was happening was it was me that was being gaslighted, not the other way around. However, if you chuck that back at the person that says it, World War III breaks out, So, I feel like I'm still being a little bit wary about what I say about this, but that's kind of the premise of where I'm at with it. That I'm no longer going to post about it, because I'm not there for the argument. I'm not there to be abused. And I engage with a number of, as do you, and we had an email, didn't we, after the weekend's kind of conversation on Twitter from a well-known adult who was adopted, in full support, that actually it's just become a minefield to even mention the word adoption online. And that's where we're at.
Yeah, well, and it's even language where there becomes this an approved or authorized version of events. And I think that ultimately, I know a couple of people who are adopted who this stuff just passes them by. They're just getting on with their lives.
Yeah.
And now I'm not saying. I've seen. Well, I was going to say that I'm not saying that they're the majority.
No,
but they're a significant. If they're a minority, they're a significant minority of people who go, I wish I wasn't adopted, but I am adopted, and I love my adopted parents, and things could have turned out differently. And that could be about their biology, their constitution, their upbringing, but they kind of go, here's what it is, and getting on with their lives.
And do you know, the one thing, so the biggest thing, and let me just share this, the biggest thing that I've learned through all of this is, and we hear it all day, sorry, no, we don't hear it all day, every day, we hear it a lot, is adopted people will wait until their adoptive parents have died until they either search or reunify or whatever. And I've always said to my sons that I never want them to feel like that, because I want them to know that I will support them if they need or want my support to be able to do that. I do not want them wasting time if that's what they want to do, because life is too short. And, you know, we don't know what's around the corner for, not for me, for them, for their parents, for their families that they've come from.
I think that's really interesting you said that, because I think that though reflects a different time. Because I think that our children, I know your children, and we're not going to share our children's stories, but the door is kicked open, and some of my children have chosen to go through it. Some of my children look at the door and go, not interested one iota.
Same
and
here.
they could, I know some of my children could pick up the phone and they could they could literally phone the people. Yeah. So it's not, and they never have, and they've literally got the numbers there, and their siblings are doing it. So it's not like it's like, and that is perhaps peculiar to our generation of adopters and children. That I know a lot of people, and I don't know about you, but I get emails and messages, people going, "Oh, we're trying, we're doing this, we're doing that." This is not the narrative of 10 years ago. And I was at a DFE meeting, and people were saying, "Well, actually, we don't really know how many people are doing this, but it's so much more than it was in the 70s." Because in the 70s, adoptive parents were told, "Go home."
Yeah.
Pretend it never happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so then you get this really complicated dynamic of I'm having an argument with a 55-year-old woman from America about her experience of adoption set against my experience as an adopter, going, well, hang on, this is oil and water, because you're saying, oh, you know, it's a human right and you paid for your kids. And I'm going, no, I didn't. And no money was changed hands. And
I know.
But we're hamstrung in the sense that it's not our story to tell. And that's the one frustration I do have in it. I want to go, look, if I could sit you down, I could tell you some things that would curl your hair about why there's children I know, why there's a very good reasons why they should never have lived with their parents.
Yeah, exactly.
And you get people like, is it Rachel, I forget her surname, who was adopted in the 70s, whose experience was of one of being abused at home. And she said, I was so happy to be adopted. But she is a pariah in the adoption community because she says,
as a result,
no, it was bloody awful. I was not perfect. I'd rather none of it had happened. But actually, what I got was better than what I had. Yeah. Anyway, we're going to get a lot of complaints over that one, aren't we?
We are. Well, do you know what? I don't care, because I don't really listen.
Bring it.
I think, just going back to social media, I think I tend to not try and block people. I will mute people because sometimes actually they do pop up and they have some valid points, and I can then choose whether I read that or not. But I tend not to try and block people, because actually, you know what? For that reason. And also, they're entitled to their opinion. But if they're going to try and invalidate my experience, then, you know, that's not fair. It's a two-way street. Yeah. I'm never going to invalidate your experience. So please don't invalidate mine by being abusive.
I totally get that. And I think my favorite, the tweet that always makes me chuckle is, "You're not adopted, you don't know anything about adoption." You go, I know, I don't know your experience, but I know much more about adoption than you, in the terms of I know the process, I know the law, I know the mechanics. So that really odd system where you've got people who were adopted 50 years ago who don't know the mechanics of adoption.
No. Exactly.
Now, that's not to dismiss their perspective, but it just means that, hang on, it's like going to a mechanic and going, do you drive? And he goes, no, I don't drive, but I know how to fix cars. And you go, well, actually, I don't trust you to fix my car because you don't drive. You go, and that is the exact comparison, isn't it? You go, I don't care. Just fix my damn car. I don't care whether you can drive or not. I think that maybe the last point, because we've prattled on and we haven't. There were some questions that were probably too big to get our arms around about sibling rivalry, but we'll not open that.
Well, that should have been an easy question, and that's like, blown up, hasn't it?
It has. The one thing I think.
Oh, that's the other thing. Oh, just the other thing as well. Yeah. Just before we leave that topic is
another thing.
No, is this, because I've seen it a couple of times. You chose to adopt. Yes, we did choose to adopt. But did we choose adoption because for what reason? Yeah, I get what they're trying to say. They're trying to say that you had to fill a gap in your life and blah, 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 all this sort of stuff, right? I get all that. But in an ideal world, and it's not an ideal world, as we know, in an ideal world, when we think back to this kind of the older generations who adopted, it was like you said, go home and, let's not mention it anymore. That's not what it's like anymore. Yes, you have this vision in your head when you're going through the process that, you will be able to change the world. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You to some extent, what they're trying to say is right, that you chose to adopt. Therefore you should, just accept what you've been dealt. But actually, when you look deeper, that's not, it's whether you chose to adopt or not is irrelevant. These children require a different style of parenting. They maybe don't even, they maybe shouldn't have been adopted in the first place. They're going to need therapy. They're not going to need support. They're going to need this. They're going to need that. They're going to need the next thing. Whether we chose to adopt or not is irrelevant. That is still there for that group of children. So I think to sling and to throw that one as a piece of mud it's irrelevant, really. Yes, I did choose to adopt, but I couldn't biologically have children. That's the be all and end all of it. And I have no regrets over that decision. But that keeps on being thrown.
There's some totally illogical arguments go around about, this sort of correlating or associating that, like for example, Adoption UK is a really good example. And we could, we can throw stones at Adoption UK if we wanted to, but to my mind, Adoption UK is supporting adoptive parents. Do you not think there's a reason we're doing that? It's to support adopted children.
Yeah. Exactly.
And people sort of like really just unable to see that is the primary focus of Adoption UK. Is it it's to support parents to support children. Mm-hmm. And people just kind of going, oh, you're just all about the adoptive parents. It's all about, and you go like, and there was a tweet from someone this week about, and I'll not mention who it is, to protect them, bless them, sort of saying, they were talking about, fighting for support. And everyone was thinking, oh, it's all about you wanting support for yourself. And and it was, but that's not what they'd said. They'd said support for my child. And then someone wading in and going, oh, just wait till they're 18. And I tweeted and went, no, they're in their 30s, they're children. And you kind of, but it's that stereotype of the adoptive parent who's like, meh, it's, I paid £1,000 for my child and I'm just, once they're 18, they're on their own, and it's just not the truth. We're just, parents, most of us are doing our best we can. And of course, there'll be idiots amongst us. There are, but we're a reflection of society. We're a cross-section of society. So you get people like us. And people like other people,
idiots like us. Anyway, sorry, I had to say that one because that one I've seen a couple of times this last couple of weeks. And I just thought,
so there's some nonsensical arguments. The one thing to maybe finish with is that we're going to get Adoption UK on in a few weeks, which is no doubt going to be a massive bun fight. But not from most people. But are we going to put out for questions then? Shall we? Should we put out for questions? Come on.
I'm leaving that one up to you.
Team talk. Executive decision. Come on. We can't. Don't just leave it up to me.
I think. Okay, so let's go for questions. But let's go for proper questions. Let's not just start slinging mud at Adoption UK. Okay? I have... I feel like, yes, there's some questions that I genuinely want to ask. Excuse me. Oh, we've frog in the throat there. There's questions that I genuinely want to ask, like, where are they going with this adopted adult support? I want to ask that question.
Yeah. Why did you start it? What's your aspiration? Yeah. Reasonable questions.
But let's not be nasty about it.
Do you need to take a little comfort break? Are you having
I think I do. Honestly, no, I've had this cough for a couple of days. It's very throaty. And when it comes. It's like very...
Oh.
Yeah.
So, well, let's do that. Let's put some... We've got some questions, and we'll put some questions out there.
Can I just say, if they're going to be insulting questions, we just delete them straight away. We're not going to ask them, okay? Because we've got Emily Frith, the CEO of Adoption UK, giving up her evening to come and talk to us. And yes, we will, as ever, hold her to as much account as we feel is appropriate, but we're not going to insult the woman.
No, and we're not going to ask disingenuous questions where people are just looking for a... Yeah, so we're going to... we'll do that. And there'll be people who are paying their subs and want to know, like, can we have better coffee at the next conference? That sort of question.
Oh, I asked that question all the time, and I was running the bloody conferences. So.
Listen, it was too, coughing and...
I know. I better not do this in the plane tomorrow. They'll think I've got
They'll drop you off at Newfoundland.
Yeah, they'll sling me out.
The parachute.
Open the door. Get rid of.
Well, you're off for your half-day break. Stroke 8 days off. I am about to fall off the edge of this cliff into the maddest couple of 10 days or so in my life. And then we'll resurface just in time to do Emily Frith. We're doing Sunflower Paul, and then we got some other exciting stuff after Easter.
We do.
Excellent.
Yeah. On top of all that, we have work-wise, we have our FASD hub for Ireland opening as well, officially at the end of this month.
That's terrible timing.
It's absolutely ridiculous timing. So we've got a pilot which has been funded by Social Entrepreneurs of Ireland, and I just feel like it's kind of taken over our lives.
Excellent.
But we've got the official opening on the 27th. I think it is 27th of this month.
Oh, are you sending me an invite?
No, not for this one, mate. Sorry,
all right, champion. That's right.
It's not that kind of thing. Although it's the same minister.
You don't need any decorating done.
No, not this time. And if I did, I'd do it myself because the job you did. Jeez.
With my broken hand.
Yes. Oh, yes, with your broken hand. I forgot about that. We might want to talk about that in the future, especially as we're now kind of venturing onto Ireland. But it's starting off as a telephone helpline, and we're going to try and develop it from there.
Are you going to man the phones? Please tell me you're manning the phones. Can I ring up? Please let me ring up. And do
I will be there. I will be there. And don't be rude and don't be mean.
Hello, it's Helmut from Austria.
Oh, stop it. Poor Helmut, if he's listening.
Oh, look at you. Honestly, you're like a sick ward. Anyway, I'm going to let you go because you're making me feel ill looking at you. Right, on that bombshell, we've done an hour there.
My brain.
It's because your sweatband is too tight. There's a visual image for people. Like the 80s all over again.
Oh, dear.
Excellent. Well, look after yourself, mon chéri. And I shall speak to you probably sooner than you wish.
Yeah, probably. And that's likely as well, sadly.
Bon Jovi.
Anchovy.